Okay, all right. Settle down. Settle. Do I have to pull this car over? No, I'm kidding. I'm Shannon Moore. This is More Up North, and I'm so glad you're joining us. This week I was really tempted to do a show that was a little Anchorage-centric about our hinky mayor, but we tape on Thursday nights, and by Saturday, God knows what could have happened. So I had to do something a little bit more timely, and since we've got a couple of legislators who are really interested in the whole hang 'em high theory for criminals in Alaska, I thought we'd do a death penalty show, and I'm really glad that you're all here, and you're going to hang tough. We have some amazing guests with amazing stories, and we have amazing states, so you'll want to stay tuned. Welcome back to More Up North, and this week I feel really lucky that we have the guests that we do. I say that every week, I know, but this week it's pretty special. We have a lot going on in Alaska right now, and certainly with the conviction, well, there wasn't a conviction, I guess, of Joshua Wade. He can't decide who he killed and when he killed him and what he's going to do, if he's going to plead out or not, and the death penalty keeps being talked about. And with that going on right now, and certainly the fact that we've had it introduced back into legislation, that we have the death penalty in Alaska, this is a concern I think that a lot of people need to pay attention to. Who is it that we want to be? And I'm lucky Curtis Edward McCarty is here, and he's up here speaking, and you're the first person that's not Alaskan, I think, that we've had on the show. So I'm really glad you're here. He served 21 years in prison. The last 19 on death row, and he was exonerated by DNA evidence in 2007 for a 1982 Oklahoma City murder he didn't commit. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm really glad you're here.
So am I.
I bet. You could probably sit on an airplane, you could sit at insurance seminars, you could listen to Sarah Palin for hours. You've been to prison.
Yeah.
You're conditioned. So tell me, how did this happen? In 1982, there was a woman who was killed. How did you get roped into that?
The young woman who was killed, her father was a police officer, so they identified every young man who knew her, and I was one of them. So that's how my name came up. And I, along with the 41 other young men, went to the police station voluntarily. Everybody did. They didn't have to go out and pick anybody up. Everybody volunteered to come in to answer questions, to give physical samples to the police for testing. Along with those other young men, I was eliminated as a suspect, and that was the end of it for 3 years.
And then what happened?
They heard a rumor that I told someone that I knew who did it, which wasn't true. I had only repeated a rumor myself that it must have been a drug connection. And that statement was corrupted into to some sort of admission of knowledge, which I didn't have.
So 21 years in prison, so 19. What was it like to sit there? You were tried, you had a jury of your peers.
Yeah.
There were 12 people that couldn't get out of jury duty deciding what was going to happen for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So how was that when that came down? I mean, did you trust the system that I'm innocent and they'll figure that out?
Yeah, I did actually. I think even my family was surprised that, as the first trial approached, that I wasn't frightened. I believed all of those things that my family had taught me when I was young, and that my teachers had taught me, that we're a great nation, a nation of laws, that we have a constitution that protects us from that sort of misconduct. So I had a fair degree of confidence that my attorneys would perform competently, and that the judge would protect me, and the jurors would see the truth of the matter and send me home. Unfortunately, that's not what happened.
No, it isn't. So at what point did you hear the death penalty?
It took 2 weeks. The trial was lengthy. I knew by the second day that I would be convicted. And death penalty trials are conducted in 2 phases, the guilt stage and then the punishment phase. And even the second stage wasn't much of a contest because of the way that I had lived my life up to that point. I didn't really have a defense, and the jury returned a death verdict.
That must have been really horrifying. Were you afraid? How do they kill people there?
In all states now, it's lethal injection.
Okay, and that's the way it was then?
Yep.
Okay, so were you afraid?
Of dying?
Mm-hmm.
When I was first arrested, I was 22, so I was still young and brash, believed I'd live forever. You know, you're advised upon admission to fill out your last will and testament, stuff like that, and I'd never done it. I still had that faith that someone was going to come to my rescue and see through this, so I didn't give it much thought until later years when they began to kill all my friends. And the day came where it looked like I probably wasn't going to make it either.
So how close were you to, you know, being strapped down and injected with a poison? How close were you to that when your case was picked up? When the rescue you were waiting for arrived?
Not particularly close, but I was already in the federal system. There are time constraints on each step of the appellate process now, so I probably had maybe 2 years to go.
So the Innocence Project stepped in, though. And my understanding is that because of DNA evidence, they were able to prove that you were not guilty of this crime.
True.
So could you have afforded the DNA testing? Did you have the resources or people that were fighting for you on the outside before the Innocence Project stepped in?
No. They had actually been involved for a number of years, but the people in the police department were lying to them as well and saying that the evidence was unavailable for testing because it had either been consumed in prior testing or was simply missing. And those assertions to the Innocence Project were false. The evidence was available. By the time they made any headway, and they did only because of the FBI, the same group of people that had committed crimes against me had committed crimes against others, and one of those other cases involved the FBI, and they had falsified some of their documents. And it was only because the FBI investigated that matter that I'm here today. I would have died on death row had they not initiated that investigation. There wasn't a first round of DNA testing. That was prohibited by a federal judge who issued an injunction saying no because of the probability of evidence tampering. But the Innocence Project persisted, the FBI persisted, and they found evidence slides at the medical examiner's office that had been under lock and key since the night of the homicide. The judge lifted her order and allowed DNA testing on that evidence, and it cleared me.
Have you talked to this woman's family? Have you talked to anyone on the other side? Have you had apologies? Have you had people say, wow, we're really sorry that we just took pretty much your entire adulthood?
No.
There's just like, whoops, okay, we'll let you out and that's your prize?
Yeah.
So you said that your family had taught you when you were a child that we live in a country of laws and of truths and of justice. Do you still think we live in a country that has those things?
I think we certainly have the potential for it. The Constitution is a sound document, and the Bill of Rights, provided we comply with the principles set forth and the guidelines for the conduct of attorneys and prosecutors, judges. But I think much of the process has become politicized, as is seen with the death penalty, where we're faced with a legal circumstance, a punishment that simply does not serve any societal purpose whatsoever, none. you know, despite the arguments we hear to the contrary, it's simply, it's an outdated and archaic punishment that has seen its day. It's no longer appropriate in a modern society, but yet we still have it. And it is an act of injustice to subject a human being to that process, and not just the offender, guilty or not, but his family and the victim and their family. They have to go through this long, drawn-out process where their pain is prolonged. They don't get the opportunity for healing because it's necessary for them to be on call at all times for each and every hearing that defendant goes through to come in and express their pain and their anguish over what had happened. It doesn't allow them to heal. Not to mention the tremendous expenditures involved in capital litigation.